Okay, let's dive in. Imagine stepping back, way back, about 125 million years, early Cretaceous China.
A different world.
Totally. And we're on a fossil safari today, looking for a dinosaur called Bolong.
Mm-hmm. Bolong sinensis.
And our guides, well, they're basically these key scientific papers, the original description from 2010.
Ooh, Godefroy and who? Yeah.
Then another one from 2014 by Zhang and colleagues looking at a younger Bolong, which is fascinating.
And there's that chapter in the Bernissard Dinosaurs book, too. Brings it together nicely.
Right. So get ready because we're going to really try and understand what makes Bolong special.
Yeah, what's great about having these different sources is you can sort of see the story unfold. The first discovery sets the scene.
Yeah.
And then boom, the juvenile specimen comes along and adds all this richness. So our mission today is basically to piece together what these fossils tell us. Its unique features, where it fits in the dinosaur family tree.
And what its bones suggest about its life back then.
Exactly. Life in the Ixian Formation.
Absolutely. So let's start with the name. Bolong. It sounds, well, it has a ring to it.
It does. And there's a nice human touch there. The genus name Bolong means Bo's dragon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it honors the Bo brothers, Bo Hai-chen, and Bo Zhu. They were instrumental in finding the first fossil.
Ah, that's great.
And then well, that's Mandarin for dragon, so Bo's dragon.
Nice. And the species name, Yixianensis.
That just points to where it came from, the Ixian Formation. Super famous fossil site. Loads of incredible stuff comes from there.
Right, a hot spot for the early Cretaceous.
Definitely. And that personal touch in the naming, you see it a lot in paleontology. It acknowledges the people, often behind the scenes, who make these discoveries possible.
Connects the science to the people. I like that.
And it anchors the find. So the holotype, the first main specimen, YHC001, that was a nearly complete skeleton.
Wow.
Yeah, for paleontologists, finding something like that is like hitting the jackpot. Just a treasure trove of data found initially in western Liaoning province.
A region known for amazing preservation, right?
Exactly. The detail you get from fossils there is often stunning.
And then things got even more interesting a few years later.
In 2013, a second Bolong turned up, this time from Inner Mongolia.
And that was different.
It was much younger, a juvenile, ZMNH-N8812.
Ooh, okay. That must have sent ripples of excitement through the community.
It really did. Finding a young one is gold dust. It opens up this whole window into how Bolong grew, how it developed, how it changed from, young to adult.
Which tells us not just about Bolong itself.
Precisely. It helps us understand growth strategies in these bigger dinosaur groups, too. Really vital stuff.
Okay, so discovery, naming, check. Let's get a picture of this animal. About 4 meters long, maybe 200 kilos. So medium-sized.
Yeah, decent size. Not enormous, like some later relatives, perhaps. The sources describe the head as somewhat convex on top, fairly stocky overall.
Stocky head. And powerful jaw, as you mentioned.
Yeah, powerful mandibles, the lower jaws, and relatively large teeth. It all points pretty strongly towards it being an herbivore.
Yeah.
Needed that strength to chew tough plants.
Makes sense. But you also mentioned autapomorphies, those unique signature features.
Exactly. Think of them as Bolong's exclusive anatomical calling cards. Traits only it has. That's how we tell it apart from its cousins.
Got it. So what were Bolong's calling cards?
Okay, so one is this specific cavity, like a little hollow, right where 3 skull bones meet near the front of the eye socket.
Which bones?
The lacrimal that forms part of the eye socket, rim the maxilla, which is the main upper jaw bone, and a backward git of the prefrontal bone, another one up near the eye. Right at that junction, Bolong has this distinct depression.
Huh. Like a little dent above its eye.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
A front-to-back deep cavity just above the edge of the orbit, the eye socket. Seems small, but these details are crucial for classification.
Fascinating. Like a secret fingerprint on its skull. What else?
Well, moving down to the lower jaw, there's the predentarium. That's the bone at the very tip of the lower jaw in ornithishing dinosaurs, forming a sort of beak.
Right, the scoop at the front.
In Bolong, the bottom protrusion of this predentarium extends quite far back, running kind of parallel to the main lower jaw bone, the dentary. That's one thing.
A long lower bit on the beak bone.
And also, how it fits onto the dentary is unusual. The predentarium only covers less than 2/3 of the height of the front of the dentary.
So it doesn't meet up fully at the front?
It means the very tip of the dentary, the main jawbone, actually sticks out above the predentarium by about 1/3 of its height. It's quite a distinct look at the front of the snout.
That is specific. So a gap between the beak bone and the jawbone tip. And the teeth, also unique.
The maxillary teeth, the ones in the upper jaw, they have this main ridge running down the chewing surface. And right at the very tip of the tooth, that ridge takes a noticeable bend or curve.
A little hook at the end of the ridge.
That's another identifier. And then the juvenile bolong, remember the second specimen?
Yeah.
It showed something else again.
What did the young one's teeth show?
On the inside surface of its maxillary teeth, the enamel was thickened, and it was sort of enclosed by the front and back cutting edges. Plus, there was a really clear vertical ridge dividing that inner surface in half.
Different teeth in the young one. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it hints that maybe their diet, or at least how they process food, might have changed as they grew up.
Which kind of leads us into how Bolong moved around. The sources suggest it wasn't strictly 2 legs or 4 legs, is that right?
That seems to be the picture, yeah. Facultative quadruped is the term.
Meaning it could walk on all 4s, but maybe didn't always.
Exactly. It had the option. The forelimbs, the arms, weren't super heavily built, perhaps not ideal for bearing lots of weight all the time.
Okay.
But, interestingly, the proportions of the lower part of the forelimb, the radius and ulna compared to the humerus, are actually quite similar to dinosaurs that were primarily quadrupedal.
So mixed signals from the front end.
A little bit, yeah. Maybe it ambled on all 4s sometimes, perhaps for low browsing.
But then could rear up.
Plausibly. The proportions of the hind limb, particularly the thigh bone versus the shin bone, do suggest it was capable of bipedal locomotion, walking on 2 legs.
Okay, so mostly bipedal, but could drop down.
Possibly. But then there's another wrinkle. Its hind foot. It's described as being relatively short and robust.
Which is more like...
More like the feet you see in fully quadrupedal dinosaurs. Sturdy supports.
So it's a bit of a mosaic, bipedal legs, maybe quadrupedal arms, quadrupedal feet.
It's not entirely straightforward. And adding to that puzzle is the juvenile again.
What about the young one's limbs?
The sources note that the juvenile Bolong had proportionally longer forelimbs compared to the adult.
Longer arms when young. That is interesting.
Yeah, that's often a trait seen in animals that spend more time on all 4s, especially when young.
So, wait a second. Could it be that baby Bolong were more quadrupedal? And then as they grew bigger and heavier, they transitioned to spending more time walking bipedally?
That's a really strong hypothesis, and the juvenile specimen is key evidence pointing in that direction. It suggests Bolong's way of moving might have changed quite significantly during its lifetime. Adaptable locomotion.
Wow. Okay, let's zoom out a bit. Where does this adaptable, uniquely featured dinosaur fit in the grand scheme in the dinosaur family tree?
Right. The original describers, Wu and colleagues, placed Bolong within a big group called Hadrosauridae.
Hadrosauridae rings a bell. That leads to the duck-billed dinosaurs, right?
Exactly. Hadrosauridae is the larger group that includes the famous hadrosaurids, the true duckbills, which became incredibly diverse and successful later on in the Cretaceous.
So Bolong is like an early cousin, or maybe even an ancestor to those guys.
That's the idea. The analysis suggests Bolong could be one of the most basal hadrosaurids found in Asia so far.
Basal meaning, like near the base of that branch of the family tree, an early version.
Precisely. One of the earliest members of that lineage to diverge. This makes it super important for understanding how this major group of plant eaters got started and spread, especially in Asia. It fills in a piece of the puzzle.
That's actually a pretty big deal for a dinosaur maybe not everyone has heard of.
Absolutely.
So all these little details, the skull cavity, the jaw shape, that bend in the teeth, the limb proportions, how they might have changed, it all comes together. It paints a picture of this unique animal, but also gives us these vital clues about the very beginnings of one of the most successful dinosaur groups ever. It's amazing how much we can learn from these bones.
It really is. These features are like evolutionary breadcrumbs. They let paleontologists reconstruct Bolong, figure out how it lived, and trace its connections, helping us understand that bigger story of dinosaur evolution in Asia during the Cretaceous.
Okay, so let's try and bring it all together for you listening. We've got Bolong, Bose dragon, this Iguanodontian dinosaur living around 125 million years ago in early Cretaceous China.
Named partly after its discoverers, which is a nice touch.
Yeah, we know it from an adult and, crucially, a juvenile specimen. It had these unique features, skull details, that odd predentarium fit, special teeth.
Autapomorphy setting it apart.
Right. And it seems to have been a flexible mover, a facultative quadruped, maybe changing how it walked as it grew up. Longer arms when young, perhaps more four-legged.
That's the intriguing possibility suggested by the fossils.
And the big picture takeaway. Bolong is potentially a very early member of Hadrosauridae, the group leading to duck-billed dinosaurs. It gives us a precious look at their early evolution in Asia.
Which really makes you ponder those differences between the young and adult Bolong. If the juvenile did have proportionally longer arms, what does that imply about how these early hadrosauroids grew? Did their lifestyle shift dramatically as they matured?
Good question. From maybe a four-legged youngster to a more two-legged adult.
Perhaps. And what other discoveries are waiting out there? Maybe Bolong fossils from different life stages, or other related dinosaurs. What could they tell us about those very first steps in the evolution of this incredibly successful dynasty of plant eaters?
Leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Every fossil find answers questions, but definitely opens up even more.
That's the beauty of paleontology. Always more to discover.